The very open question, so tell me about yourself, will sometimes come up in an interview, and for many candidates, this is a point at which they completely flounder. And you should be your own specialist subject. You should be able to talk about yourself with more knowledge, more freedom, more clarity than just about any other topic around. But whether it's embarrassment or nerves or what have you, many candidates just simply fall apart at this hurdle. And as an interviewer, this simple question can be a great way to spread the field. As the candidate, this, if handled properly, is an absolute gift. I mean, you're basically in the cockpit with the instructor who handed you the stick. You've got control and you can take it anywhere you want to. So whether you're going to wander around or possibly auger in the conversation, or have a plan, have a course, and deliver yourselves there safely and well, that is entirely up to you. So as part of the interview series, this episode is going to cover how to prepare for this question and how to execute it very well if you're ever asked it in the interview context. In terms of time frame, given the openness of this question and that it's about you, in theory, you could speak for hours on this subject. And obviously, please don't. Many people might be tempted to just run on randomly about themselves. So the best way to make sure that we keep this within the normal time constraints, most questions are going to be giving, a few minutes answer at tops. If the interviewer wants more detail, they will ask and you can go into it a little bit more. And this is a perfect question to give a bit of detail that can provide a springboard for future development and other questions that will come later in the interview. So a good way to structure this and keep it focused and within a timely manner is to give it a bit of a timeline. Talk about your origin story, your past, your present, where you are now, and a little bit about the future. And there'll be certain elements that are going to key into each of these quite nicely. Also, just be aware that you want to sprinkle in some of your both professional as well as personal interest and achievements, and make sure that you take time to explain some of your values, where they've come from, and always use point, evidence, explanation. In other words, make a point, a subject, statement, I am interested in this, I have done this, give some examples that support that, and then just explain briefly how those examples tie into your original statement. And then that will all wrap up nicely into a very clear answer that any interviewer can follow, and it gives you all the outline bare bones about who you are to springboard off later. And we'll tackle each one of those one by one. Of a timeline progression, obviously it makes sense to start with the past, and this is where you can just give a brief background of where you grew up, what it was like in your childhood, things that were interesting for you, especially if those have become lifelong interest, especially if they have a relevancy to your personal interest and career prospects at the moment. You can look at the present, what you're doing at the moment, your key achievements, how you got to where you are now, so it all ties in nicely, and then look forward to the future. In terms of the future, this is where you can lay out goals, aspirations, see how those would tie in with your employment discussion, why you're looking at that job, how that could fit into your future plans, how you can work together in the future. All these things will tie in nicely in your timeline. And within this timeline, there are going to be some few key clear decision points. Now, you don't need to go through explaining every decision you made through your entire life and career. That would be a bit laborious. But it's worth picking out, maybe just one or two at the most key decisions, and look back on that with hindsight and just explain a little bit your thinking at the time, what the options were, why you made the decision in the way that it was, and then the consequences, positive and negative, looking back on it from this perspective. Because this is going to support your ability to explain how well you make decisions, because any employer is looking at a potential candidate in terms of what can they do, what skills, talents, the abilities they bring to the position, but on a day-to-day basis, can I delegate decisions to this person and be confident that they're going to do it in an efficient and practical method and not do harebrained things without any structure to them. So showing that you can do this within your timeline is just a nice way of handling two things at once. And in deciding which of the personal activities and interests that you wish to sprinkle into your timeline, to consider ones where you've had any sort of achievement. If you've achieved a black belt rank in a martial art, for example, that shows dedication, hard work, purpose, discipline. All these will be positive attributes in your personal life that will translate over into business. You may well have been a weekend sports coach. Again, that's showing leadership and organization. These will translate directly into work. Achievements, anything that you can use in your personal life that just fill you out as a human being, as a character that's interesting, that makes you stand out from other candidates. These will all help you be the candidate that sticks in the interviewer's mind at the end of a long day when perhaps they've seen a dozen or more people that all are very similar, and you can help be the standout person. Another key element that can be detailed through your timeline discussion is, what are your personal values? These don't come from a vacuum. Chances are they came from your past, from your experience, and you've got the opportunity perfectly within this question to phrase, what is important to you? What are your priorities? Companies will actually be quite interested in that. Companies themselves are interested in promoting what their own values are. So if you can reflect that in your own candidacy, it just puts you on a much stronger footing. So, typically you can take examples from childhood of, well, for example, I had a really hard work ethic from an early age because, within my family, we lived on a farm, and that meant early rising, and we did chores, and I chopped wood, and I plowed, and I did this, and I did that. There's any number of examples that you can give that start from, the earliest childhood of, what were things that were important to the core of who you are, and just threading that through your timeline all the way from the past up through to the present and where your expectations are in the future just stands you out as a very solid candidate. Quick rundown on using the structure of point, evidence, explanation. It's something that can be applicable to this question and many others in an interview scenario, and I'll just give a quick example. So, making the point. In the interview, you might make the point of, I'm one of the company's top salespeople. In and of itself, that's a statement. It's interesting, will get their attention, but not much more beyond that. Then you can provide evidence. Yes, last year I was the number 2 salespeople out of 23 within the team, and at 32%, I actually had the highest growth on my region, and that stood me out against the general company average, which was 20%. We had an amazing product and we had a great year, but I was ahead of the curve, and I was really, really happy to have those results. Sounds more convincing. Fills out the story much more deeply, but you can take it a third step, explanation. Well, I was actually able to achieve that because I did the following steps. I had worked very hard on targeting some long-term business with some of our key clients. I prioritized them. I brought in some innovative options that, augmented the package that we typically had on offer to these people without hitting the bottom line from our side too much at all, but we were able to increase the sales vastly, and the return on that was fantastic. It helped myself, it helped the company, and ... So you can give the full story, and that is extremely powerful. So here's how a typical answer to the "tell me about yourself" question might sound in a candidate who's thought all these things through. We'll just have a fictitious person who's going for a job in the tech industry. So here we go. So yes, I was really fortunate. I grew up in a highly creative environment. My dad was an architect. My mother worked on the local paper. She taught me the power of words and getting to the truth of things and how that mattered. At home, my dad had a studio with, his drawing board and all sorts of materials and pens, and I just found I loved drawing and could just play for hours and hours with all of those materials. And over time, I felt when I grew and went to school, I was very interested in artistic things, but I also had a bit of a scientific bend, and I actually won school prizes in both science and in the arts. I really enjoyed pottery. It's something I do until this day because I just like the creative process and having something solid to show for my efforts that I've created with my my own hands, and I give them as gifts to my friends and so on. I have a little portfolio and a small website as just a little business I do on the sideline that keeps me busy. And I learned at those early ages, values like hard work and creativity. And when I went to school, I saw that I wanted to get into the tech industry, particularly with website development and online, because I saw that was where the vision of the future was going to be happening. And I did some amazing work. I was so pleased with the previous companies I worked with. I was so fortunate because we did substantial projects with museums and educational institutions and larger commercial customers, and that drew my interest in artificial intelligence. And one of the reasons I'm here speaking with you today is because you're one of the leaders in this field. I've read up on some of the articles about some of the work that you're doing, and I'm particularly been interested in the project. And you also seem to be one of these companies that's exploring the area of AI with something of a moral compass, which is quite unusual these days. And that really appeals to me. So that strikes to the heart of why I'm sitting here today to want to have this discussion with you. So in summary, having the question posed to you of tell me about yourself, while being quite open-ended and potentially intimidating, if you've done some prep work, is an absolute gift to you in the interview experience. It gives you the perfect platform to just lay out a bit of who you are, where you came from, where you're going, what's important to you, what you've achieved, what you're looking to do in the future, and how this all ties in with the conversation that you're having on this very day with your interviewer looking to take things to the next level.